All right. It took us a minute to get here, but we are here. Hello, beautiful people. It is me, Tasha K with Goddess Day. And per usual, I am so excited to be here with you guys today for the Tasha Talks Money live podcast experience. And I love doing live podcasts because it's one thing to just be talking, but to be able to get the experiences and the comments of everybody in the process. I just love that. And I want to welcome our very special guest today, Ariane from the Emotional Exchange. I am super, super happy to have you with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Tasha. I'm excited about our conversation
Oh,
today.
it's about to be good. I'm all ready to go. I'm ready to go in now. And I want to start. We're going to circle back, but real fast as we jump
Mm-hmm.
in, I want to hear, our topic today is how can you be emotionally well as you
Mm-hmm.
work to build wealth? And I want to preface that by saying, for a lot of us, we are taught
Mm-hmm.
at a very young age about the importance of success and achievement. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that for me, from the time that I was very, very young, I was taught that, getting straight A's in school is important. And it
Mm-hmm.
was normal for me to sacrifice my wellness, to sacrifice my self care, to sacrifice my sleep
Mm-hmm.
in order to be successful. And I already knew, even while I was young, that I was going to have to work twice as hard as everybody
Mm-hmm.
else just to be able to have the level of success that I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed justified. It seemed worth it. It seemed important. It seemed necessary. So I want to know from you before we really dive in, why do you
Mm-hmm.
think that this conversation is so important?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Well, one, we're talking about wealth building and generational wealth and taking care of ourselves. And the way that you take care of yourself is a big testament to how your, generations after you is going to be able to connect with you. Like your
Mm-hmm.
legacy is now. You're creating your legacy now. And we see
Mm-hmm.
these conversations about generational wealth and entrepreneurship and running our own businesses, but it's also important to make it to through your journey. So yeah, in your 20s or 30s or even 40s, you can be building wealth. But what does 60-year-old you look like after spending all of these years neglecting yourself, not going to, fitness instructors, or not eating well, or not seeking a therapist and talking to somebody? What does that stress look like in your body long term? What does your business look like long term if you, as the CEO, as the person who is leading and guiding us, doesn't have the sustainability to carry on this legacy that you're building? So that's why it's important, because I want us to be able to eat the fruit of our labor, see our younger generations, let's see our grandchildren, let them allow them to bask in all of our hard work. And none of those things are going to happen if we are stressed out, have bunches of money, and completely miserable and unhappy. So, yeah.
Like, I love that you focused on. So I'm over here taking my notes. If you guys are listening, whether you're listening live or whether you're about to run this back and listen to the replay, make sure that you take some notes. You should have your Gotta Stay notebook by now. And I'm looking for one because I'm writing in mine. But make sure you have your notebook and a pen so that you can take notes, because this stuff is important.
Come on, man.
And I'm so glad that you said sustainability, right? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
does the long term game look like? And I always say, like, and you talking about 60, baby, I'm talking about 30 and 40 because I'm starting to feel
Yeah.
it right now. Y'all can't tell me, you cannot
Right.
tell me that you are not feeling the effects of
Yes.
aging right now, even though we young,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong.
Yes. Very much.
We young.
Very much young.
However,
Mm-hmm.
not as young as we once were, because I went ice skating the other day and it was so much fun. I hadn't been ice skating in about maybe 10 years. But I was out there,
Ooh.
and first of all, I had to find my bearings. Me and Gravity had to
Yeah.
have a conversation. And then I'm looking at these kids, they just fall, bloop, they just jump
Mm-hmm.
right back up like they have a spring in them, like this. They just
Right.
down.
Right. Right.
Wow, to be young again. But at the same time, I always say, youth covers a multitude of sins. Like, you ain't get enough sleep, that's all right, I got you. You ain't eat right, it's
Mhm.
okay, I
It's
got you.
okay.
You ain't been working
Right.
out, no big deal. But turn 30.
Mhm.
Turn 30 and think you gonna still be doing those same
Listen,
things.
it ain't the same. The bounce back is not the same.
And the reality check is going to hit you hard.
Yeah.
So that is why I think, as you mentioned, it's so important because now we're getting in that era, we're getting, at that
Yeah.
stage where we're starting to feel the impact, right?
Yeah. I wanted to speak about that a little bit, Tasha, because the the truth of the matter is that we are the generation to make the change. We are capable. We have the information, we have the knowledge, we have the resources. We are our ancestors' dream already. So with all the tools that you have and access, like obtainability to the things that you have, your wellness is something that should definitely be prioritized when we're talking about generational wealth. It seems like there is this theme that you have to choose one or the other. Like I have to choose either the happy family or relationship or my career, and that there's no room to have both in existence at the same time. And I just want to remind us of the people who have made those choices, who we look up to as success stories, who have also now mentioned that they are lonely, that they wish that they did not make certain mistakes in their marriages, that they wish that they would have found someone sooner, that they wish they would have had children earlier. Like, I just want us to pay attention to the patterns of success that has come before us so that we can use the tools and accessibility that we have now to make a difference.
Pay attention to the
Yeah.
patterns of success.
Hmm. That's already written.
So before we, and there's some things that I want to make sure that we circle back on, but before we really
Mhm.
get into it, do you all know who Ariana is? Like, do you all know who she is? I've been calling her the Black woman therapist because I know how important it is for Black women to be able to be in spaces and conversations like this with people who look like them. But
Mhm.
Ariane works as a psychotherapist in Atlanta, Georgia. We're both in Atlanta right now.
Yeah.
And she specifically works on assisting entrepreneurs with their everyday emotional reactions to life
Mhm.
stressors. So let that sink in. Like, all of us are experiencing stressors on a day to day basis, but we don't always know how to deal with them. And that's what she
Right.
does. She helps people cope with life stress. She also assists people with addressing symptoms of emotional distress, such as depression and anxiety, which we're going
Mhm.
to talk more about today. During her journey
Mhm.
to become a psychotherapist, she witnessed the
Mhm.
importance of psychoeducation in everyday life. As she consumed lessons on trauma, neuropsychology, psychological history, and just being human, she experienced a growing compassion for herself. Ariane was able to make the connection to better understand interactions throughout her lifetime that contribute to her personal issues of abandonment, imposter syndrome, and self criticism. So, thank you so much for sharing such a vulnerable bio with us today.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some of the things that you have experienced in your own life and what imposter syndrome has
Mhm.
looked like for you. But before we do, you
Mhm.
said something earlier that we are the generation to make the change. And I want you to say a little bit more about that. What does that mean to
Mhm.
you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, just even us having a conversation about mental health in general is an example of us being the change. It wasn't normalized to have conversations about mental health. Mental health was hugely tabooed in the generations right before us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very in close proximity. Therapy is being glamorized now as a vessel to have a better life, especially coming out of the pandemic. But even pre-pandemic, it wasn't something that was trendy. So that reason alone, acknowledgement of our mental health, people talking about postpartum depression, couples going to therapy, children going to therapy, getting young boys and young girls, Black young boys and Black young girls, experiencing Black history and actually getting the true education of where they're coming from, and even just the acceptability of African culture being a part of our norm. And you see a lot of Black Americans wanting to be connected to their roots. There's just so many different pieces of
Mm-hmm.
information that we are getting. Our accessibility to YouTube, we have the ability to teach ourselves absolutely anything without even going to school or paying somebody to do it. The accessibility that we have to education is why we are different and why we are the generation to make an impact, for sure.
I definitely love that, and I can see it with my own parents. And I was thinking about how, we have glamorized therapy. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, therapy is the move. Like, go get you some help. We're not about to be continuously dealing with the same traumas. It's not cute. Like, it's not
Right.
cute. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and but I think about how, that wasn't necessarily available to our parents, and we get to be
Right.
involved in a conversation for self-care, self-love, and, receiving help. Right. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we fighting for our lives over here. Like, we really
We
are
are.
doing a lot of the work to make sure that we are not carrying on that trauma. And I think
Mm-hmm.
about what that's going to look like for our children, right? Like, our parents'
Mm-hmm.
generation was different. Our generation is different. And I think it could be the
Mm-hmm.
case that our children, they might not have to fight for self-love the same way we do, right? Because we've
Mm-hmm.
already done so much work. The evolution of that is going to look
Exactly.
like they are born in a world where they already feel worthy. They're not doing
Mhm.
affirmations every single day just to remind themselves that their
Mhm.
humanity means something. And that is
Mhm.
so exciting to me because sometimes I feel like, you know, the struggle is never ending. The healing is
Right.
never ending. Working on myself, the process of that is never ending. But the
Mhm.
hope is that my child and my children's children, that they don't have
Mhm.
that same, fight to feel
Mhm.
worthy that I have.
Mhm.
But it's a privilege, right? It's a privilege for me
Mhm.
to even be in the conversation for demanding my worthiness because it wasn't even a conversation that our parents were able to have. So the evolution of this is
Mhm.
just such a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Such
Yes.
a
I love
beautiful
that so much. I love that so much. And I also just want to highlight that the healing is a journey. Like having the belief system shift, we are shifting our beliefs, and we're hoping that our beliefs about our self-worth, our self-love, and our all of those things, just like our mental health, abuse, trying to get help, adjusting, community, love, accepting and expressing emotions, we're hoping that those things are something that will be passed on, because they will, because we're doing the work naturally. But I also just want to say that when things are passed down in generation, it does not minimize the work that needs to be done. Think of your mental health as exercising, or think of it as like a business that is being passed down to family generations, a farm. Just because my great grandfather own this farm doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have to work as hard. It just means that my work looks differently because of the technology and the evolution of resources that have come, that I have that he didn't have. But I still probably have to wake up super early. I still probably have to, work a certain amount of hours that he did, but the labor of it all looks differently. So I think that sometimes we think of mental health and healing as something that does not take physicality, but mental health is just as physical. Having positive mental, emotional wellness is just as physical as losing weight, eating healthy, and building a business from scratch.
I love that you said, the work, it doesn't necessarily go away, but it's just
Right,
going to look different. And I
for sure.
think that is literally the manifestation of the conversation of looking at what it has looked like from generation to generation. I remember when, I don't know if my mom is listening, but I remember when I was
Mhm.
younger, I was in my room and I was crying, and I can't remember why I was crying, but I just remember I was so hurt. My little heart was hurt. And I heard my mom coming around the corner And she said, I'm thinking that she about to come and comfort me. I'm like, oh, yes, my mom's coming. And
Yeah.
when she came into the room, she was like, Tasha, stop crying. Crying is a sign of weakness. And
Mm.
she meant well from, the
Mhm.
perspective that she had, because there was a certain strength that was necessary for her to be able to survive in
For
life.
sure. For
Right. But
sure.
when she, put that on me, I can remember something turned off in me. But as I
Mm.
grew older, right, I have been able to turn that back on just
Yeah.
because of what doing the work looks like in my generation. And that's
Mhm.
going to continue to evolve and evolve and evolve.
Yes.
And I think that is just so beautiful. But I want to hear more about what you mean.
Mhm.
And shout out to Markeisha. She said, "May our children not have to fight for their self worth and peace." And amen to that.
Amen.
I want to hear more though about um, what you mean when you say that this work, the work of healing, is just as physical as anything else. Say more about
Oh yeah, for sure. When we think about, our brain is a muscle, right? And it changes and evolves as we obtain more information. So we have to work the muscle of our brain by obtaining and retaining positive inputs, is what I like to call them. We need positive inputs every day. We have to pay attention to what we're listening to, what we're eating, where we're going, our surroundings, what positions we're putting our body in that will impact our mental health. Like, one thing that I do is I do not listen to rap music in the morning. There is no way that I could wake my butt up and then start hearing curse words straight off the bat, because that is going to ignite a different personality inside of me. That's not what I want to carry my whole day. Like,
that.
what are we
Mhm.
doing? So when I
Mhm.
say
Mhm.
that your mental wellness is physical, I'm saying that you have to move. A big piece of our mental wellness comes with how we move our bodies. It's not just exercise is not just about losing weight, it's about accessing happy hormones and allowing them
Mm.
to set themselves off naturally. And the way that you do that naturally is moving your body, getting vitamin D from the sun, listening to certain sounds,
Mhm.
and just messages. What are you looking at? Like, making sure that you're taking breaks from these daggone computers, and relaxing your mind. How are you settling your spirit so
Mhm.
that you can go through your day positively?
And I hear, and a lot of what I hear you saying is like the choice of it all too. You know,
Hmm.
making decisions that are going to pay off later as well.
Yeah, I mean, every day we're making decisions that will impact our mental health. Like, when you give somebody a compliment, it sets off serotonin in your brain. When you hug someone, it is setting off oxytocin, because that's our love chemical. Like, just being aware of the interactions is a huge part of our mental wellness.
Oh, I'm gonna come back to that because I want to tie it in with some other stuff. But I want to
Hmm.
talk about one of the reasons that I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I see how much you are a huge advocate for access to therapy,
Hmm.
and how passionate you are about people actually feeling their feelings. And so I
Yeah.
wanted you to say, why do you think therapy is so important, and why do you think that it is important for us to be able to feel our feelings?
Yeah, I think therapy is important. The most blatant way that I could say is that we walk through this world with a mask. We all do. We leave our house and put a mask on. Therapy is an opportunity for you to take your mask off, or at least learn how to have the courage to take the mask off, take the cape off, to be your naked, true self, which we all are terrified of. But the truth of the matter is that our brain has protectors that has protected us from our true feelings. So I want to normalize emotions so that when we do get to therapy or when we do have opportunities to have intimate relationships, we
Mhm.
can do them authentically and in a very
Mhm. Mhm.
vulnerable way.
I'm
Yeah.
laughing because I'm literally thinking about a scenario. Y'all are gonna laugh at me, but I don't care. I'm gonna share it anyway. I told y'all I had kind of turned off my emotions for a long time in my life.
Mhm.
And I remember, I didn't date until I was 28. And that's probably part of the reason I tell people I had
Mm.
a icebox
Mhm.
where my heart used to be, like, for
Mhm.
real.
Mhm.
And I was talking to this guy, and I would say we were talking. And he was just telling me stuff like, he would say, I miss you. And I was like, first of all, that's doing too much. Like, um, I don't know. It's too many feelings involved. And like, I don't think
Mhm.
I can do
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
And he
Mhm.
told me one day, he was like, Tasha, like, you do relationships like a business. Like, there
Mm.
is
Mhm.
just cold. And I really
Mm.
sat with that. And one day I was doing this exercise, and part of the exercise was like, do something that's out of your comfort zone. And the
Mhm.
thing that came to me to do was like, try to have an emotional interaction with another person that
Mhm.
romantically that wasn't like a business transaction. So
Mhm.
I really didn't know how to do this. And so I went to Google and I
Mhm.
typed in romantic text messages.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
really did. And then there is a
Okay.
website for romantic text messages. There's
What does that
literally
tell you? What does that
that
tell
I'm
you
not
about
the
the
only
people of the
one.
world?
I'm not
It
the
tells
only
you that you're
one.
not the only one. And it also tells you that you're not the only one who has been wearing a mask or who has learned to suppress their emotions
Mhm.
and not express them. A big piece that I was talking to one of my mentors about is that she is around 72-ish. Sorry, Miss D, if I got your age wrong, but I love you. But yeah, we and I'm 31 turning 32. We both received the same messages from our mothers about our feelings. Suck it up. What you crying for? Like you're doing too much. Relax yourself. Like why are you getting so upset? Those messages teach us to suppress our feelings, and across generations, they have been the same for years. So, when I'm talking about generational healing, generational wealth, I'm talking about changing those messages, no longer telling ourselves that it's not okay to express ourselves. If I
And
want
you
to
can
cry,
make
I
a
can cry.
decision. You can make the decision to do something different. And
Absolutely.
when I promise you, like my palm, like I had picked a romantic text message and I picked the one
Mhm.
that was like the least romantic. I was like, we're
Yeah.
not about to do too much. Like, let me take some baby steps. And my palms were sweaty. I ain't never
Mm.
experienced nothing like this before, like I'm in a movie. Like my palms were sweaty. And I honestly
Mhm.
felt like I was gonna pass out from sending a simple text like I miss you or something.
Mhm.
And I sent it, and girl, when I tell you like it the switch turned on. My boyfriend will tell
Mm.
you like I am the most emotional, the most romantic, the most
Mhm.
loving. And my friend
Mhm.
told me, she was like, you experience such a wider range of emotion now than you used to.
Mhm.
And I think that that
Mhm.
is so important, and that's what it looks like for us to like let go of the numbness, the ways that we're moving
Mhm.
through the world so
Mhm.
disconnected and so
Mhm.
disintegrated from ourselves.
Right, right. And a huge part of what therapy does is it mirrors a safe relationship. It mirrors positive communication. It mirrors a healthy communal relationship where both people are reciprocating and both people are sharing in exchange and safety is established. A non-judgmental experience is established. And I hope that those who are in therapy and, go through the process of healing are able to provide that safe space to others. Because what we've seen in our early childhood, youngers, and across generations, that expressing your feelings was not safe. And hence, our ancestors, it was not safe for them.
Right.
Being Black people, it was not safe for them to look weak, right? But we get to, like you said, make a choice to change that narrative in our belief system of what strong looks like, what weak looks like, what does emotional expression in a healthy way look like? We get to define that.
Um, and we are defining that,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what I think is so powerful, is that we have been changing the narrative and changing the conversation, and you know, putting this at the forefront, and stress is
Hmm.
still killing us. Stress is still killing us,
Yeah,
because
for
as
sure.
much as we talk about, you know, taking off the cape, that we're not
Hmm.
superwoman, that we're not your
Hmm.
mule, you know, that
Hmm.
black women are not your savior, you know, that
Mm.
we're not going to be doing everything for everybody.
All the time.
Even though we have those conversations, the reality of our
Hmm.
life and everybody's
Hmm.
life is that there's a lot going on. You know, it's like
Hmm.
you got to go to work, you may have to go to school, you got to do the dishes, you
Right.
got to do the laundry, you got to clean the house, and don't let you
Got
have
to.
kids. I mean, I don't know how y'all do it.
Nah,
There
seriously.
are just talk
I
just thinking
don't
about,
have children.
look, ghetto,
It's
okay,
a whole
very
nother
ghetto.
level. It's a
But
whole nother layer. Yeah.
and there's just a lot going on in life in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on in, you know, the things that we have to deal with, that people tell
Hmm.
us is normal, that going
Right.
to work and taking care of the kids and
Hmm.
having a social life and having to
Yeah.
do all of these other things, when it's like it's falling off my plate. I am
Yeah.
overwhelmed and I'm overworked and I'm overburdened. And it is actually, you
Hmm.
know, I like to talk about cortisol just very clearly, because
Hmm.
whether you feel, you know, you don't know, when you don't know that,
Hmm.
oh, cortisol, you know, you don't
Hmm.
necessarily
Hmm.
feel it, but
Hmm.
the and black women are notorious for not feeling stress. Black people,
Right.
women, people in general, in this hyper capitalist
Hmm.
environment, we're very
Hmm.
used to the overachievement cycle. We have
Hmm.
very much normalized overworking, you know,
Uh-huh.
working 80 hours a week. We don't even
Yes,
know stress
that's
anymore.
fine.
We can't
Hmm.
even feel
Hmm.
stress. It's like the alarm
Hmm.
is going off, but we cannot hear it. We have
I
drowned it out.
Okay. Now you're speaking, because the drowning of it, it's not that the stress is not there. It's just
Right.
that we have learned very early to suppress the stress, work through the stress, and we've normalized the stress into our experiences, which has benefits when you think about the growth and the impact and how achieving we are. But the other impact that it has is on our personal well being, our ability to take breaks, our own personal love for ourselves. Sometimes we have resentment over ourselves and our abilities to be high achieving. So you have guilt, workers' guilt. I don't want to sit here and not do anything. If I'm not doing anything, then I'm lazy and who am I? And, you know, all these negative self talks that come in there, and messages and beliefs about what does rest look like. That's why there's a whole wave of not just entrepreneurs, but therapists and mental health practitioners, self care, because we're really seeing this wave of how important rest is. And I just want to like normalize the fact that rest, yes, is absolutely important and necessary to talk about in our Black community. And so is self care. And what's also important to acknowledge, that without talking to the experiences that led us to believe that self care wasn't important, that have led us to believe that we have to overwork ourselves, over taking care of ourselves, without experiencing what those exchanges were earlier on, we're not going to be able to enjoy the self care. Again, mental health is a physical thing. You have to do the work in order to relieve the stress, in order to be emotionally well and healthy. You cannot self care yourself out of trauma. You cannot rest yourself out of trauma. You're going to have to literally find a safe place, a safe environment that you can take your mask off, take your cape off, take your worker boots off, and really connect with your
Hmm.
soul.
And really
Mhm.
connect with your soul.
Mhm. Yes.
And I'm just over here thinking, I don't be trying. I don't. We ain't got to rush. Some stuff. Sometimes you just need to process
Mhm.
things,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And the topic today is, how to be emotionally well as
Mhm.
you build wealth. And I'm
Yeah.
really thinking about, what are the connectors? How do we
Mhm.
connect? Because sometimes it feels so disconnected as we talk about, the reality of the stress that we deal with in life, and then
Mhm.
understanding that the achievement cycle isn't going anywhere because we're
Right.
still 400 years behind our peers when it comes to, building wealth. And that process isn't going to get any easier overnight.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I'm constantly thinking about what does that connective piece look like? And when we talk about, it's like, what is it, even when all those things around us aren't going to
Mhm.
change? How do
Mhm.
we figure out how to have that quiet and still place on the inside where our soul lives, where
Mhm.
our spirit exists? How do
Mhm.
we figure out how to maintain stillness there when there's
Mhm.
so much that's required and going on around us? And is that even possible?
Yeah, well, one of my mentors, he's in on Instagram, and he said it's very hard to have it all at once. And I just wanted to speak on that statement is because we have to think about the realities of what we can engage in at one time. And we have to understand that life has ebbs and flows. So not all the time will certain areas of your life be at 100%. And I think that we need to incorporate, and I even I think we do need to incorporate grace, patience, leniency into our lifestyle.
I
Maybe
want to
this
pause you.
area,
I want to
yeah.
pause you right there because we need to put some grace in there. We need to put some leniency in there. But I'm working
Thank
with
you.
people who are literally trying to do the work of several generations in one. And sometimes
Mm-mm.
it just doesn't even feel like there is a lot of space for leniency. Sometimes I'm
Mm-hmm.
just being honest. It's like we
Mm-hmm.
can have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, but what
Yeah.
does it actually look like applied to
Yeah.
the life of a woman who is an overachiever or a man who wants to provide a legacy for his family? And we really trying
Mm-hmm.
to do this in real life. It's like,
Yeah.
what is how do, how do we
What
do
is
it?
in your what is in your control and what is not? I think that when you just said that they're trying to make impact for generations to pass, I think about like what is outside of your control versus what is in your control. And I see that like there's individuals who want to take on, like, I'm a therapist, and I come from a home that was not necessarily perfect or healthy when it comes to communication or mental health. Both of my parents have struggles with mental health, and they still to this day, I love y'all, but I'm gonna call y'all out. Neither one of them done seen a damn therapist. So, it's just like I'm
Look,
calling
let
y'all
me
out
pretend
today.
to be shocked.
Oh, right. But that is our generation. But do you think that my job, this is when we honestly have to be honest with ourselves and
Oh
take
wait.
off the cape.
Oh
Is
wait.
my job here with my years, is my spirit, my soul's job to
Oh my
heal my
gosh.
mother's trauma? Is that what I'm here for? Or am I here to use the gifts that God gave me to make impact and change? Yes,
Hmm.
impact, change. That impact and change may not be specifically just and only for my mother, just and only for my grandmother, just and only for my father, just and only for my brother. My impact is way greater than my immediate family, and I love them. Anybody see them? They all up on my Instagram page. Y'all at Emotional Exchange. Love them. But my purpose here is bigger than that.
Hmm.
So I think that
Ooh,
sometimes
that's so
we have,
bold and brave and like, girl, you preaching
I
to me
love
right
them.
now.
I love them. I really do. But I think that when you have the responsibility of being the one, being the only, being the impactor of your crew, of your family, of your tribe, you do take on the responsibility unconsciously to fix everything and everyone around you. But that being the fixer, being the people pleaser, being the go to helper is not healthy, because we just said that life is ebbs and flows, and the percentages of different parts of your life are going to be at different measurements
How am I
at any
supposed to
given
not be a
time.
fixer, Ariane? How am I supposed to do that? I am a fixer. Like this is so good because we have developed so many different mechanisms that drive
Mhm.
us. I am
Right.
definitely a fixer. I know some of
Mhm.
you are people pleasers. We all have
Yep.
our things that we have. And what really stood out to me is when you said, like, we are, what can we actually do? We're not even here to do everything, right? And so even if we do have the thought process, even if we want to have create a generational legacy, that doesn't mean that we have to be the only person who contributes to that. We can create a
Right.
generational foundation, right? We can create a space for the positive evolution to take place, right?
Right.
We don't have to do all the heavy lifting.
No.
We can just be, one of the shoulders that people
Right.
begin to stand on. We don't have to, we don't have to walk the whole mountain. We can just
Right.
start taking some of those steps. And this is important because
Exactly.
when you try to take on everything, it's actually
Mhm.
self sabotage. You're selling yourself
Absolutely.
short, and you're not going to be able to accomplish what you could have accomplished had you just been realistic in the first place.
Right. Exactly.
This is
And
the
mhm.
Go
Mhm.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, being realistic, being honest. I think a big piece of our superwoman hero complex that we've been taught to have let's through trauma. I'm going to say through trauma, okay? It's not like we came into this world wanting to be these superheroes and wanting to take everything on. This has
Mhm.
definitely been um systematic oppression on our people to overcome, and just all of the messages that our ancestors and generations before us has learned. But because we are the generation that has the information and access to the tools, we can redefine what wealth looks like. We can redefine what healthy living right now looks like. And I think that is super duper important to understand what your purpose is and how you can, like you said, be the shoulders, take the steps for other people behind us. And I think being informative over of mental health, over how your brain works and operates, about the chemicals within inside of you, the physiological aspects of just being human beings, being able to understand that and pass that information down, that's like huge.
Mhm.
That's huge. I wish someone would have told me that, sweaty palms or, crying excessively could possibly lead to depression. Like, I didn't have big conversations about mental wellness and what that looked like, even though I was a child who was experiencing depression.
I'm gonna circle back to that in a second. I wanted to say that once you create this context that we're talking about, where you I'm gonna be honest, I actually see a pathway now to like take off the cape. I didn't
Hmm.
really see it before. It's like I'm a
Hmm.
superwoman and that's just that. Like
Hmm.
you can't tell a superwoman not to be a
Hmm.
superwoman. But
Yeah.
when I look at what is honest, it
Hmm.
really does create a new context for me in terms of just workability.
Yes.
And then once you can be honest about that, then you can start to look at what do you actually have the capacity for. And I want to say that if we want to avoid the burnout and we want to
Hmm.
avoid the stress and all of that, you have to look at the fact that, you know, like Ariane said, you're not going to be able to be on 100% in everything all the time. And you want to look at what season are you in and what do you have the capacity for in that
Right.
particular season, and make peace with that and have that be
Exactly.
enough and have that be okay. But
Yeah.
Ariana, I wanted to share something from your Instagram page. Let
Mm-hmm.
me see if I can. Let's see. Okay. Can you see it on the screen?
Nope.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, cool.
So it says, this is something I found while I was stalking you today. And
Okay.
it says, this year I suffered through the worst depressive episode of my life
Mm-hmm.
silently. In that same 3 months, I made the most money, seen the most
Mm-hmm.
clients, connected with beautiful people, and developed an 8-week wellness curriculum. Whoop, whoop.
Mm-hmm.
So when people look at me and say, she has done the work, I'm doing the work. Depression can
Mm-hmm.
look so different outwardly. It's in the solitude of a person's home where we lose the battle. And there are a couple
Mm-hmm.
things that, while you were talking about that you were a child experiencing depression and that's something that you have
Mm-hmm.
dealt with, and you were also talking about, the different things that you do or that we should be doing to
Mm-hmm.
be more physical in our efforts for wellness. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to, like, this right here is literally the embodiment of this whole conversation for me, because we're talking about how can we make our
Mm-hmm.
wellness a priority even as we
Mm-hmm.
are achieving.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know, what was that like? What was that experience like for you?
Which experience?
The experience of achieving wellness. I mean, being an achiever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Accomplishing the things that you've accomplished while
Mm-hmm.
also doing the work.
Okay. Well, the reason why I put this out here is because I wanted to normalize the fact that we are all experiencing things in a very complex, dynamic way. And if you are a creative, then you are someone who is complex and dynamic. And I also wanted to normalize the fact that just because you see someone doing doesn't necessarily mean that they have achieved what they personally want to achieve. And I also just wanted to also normalize the fact that don't judge a book by its cover. Like, we never really know what someone is going through on the inside. And Instagram is, again, a mask that people show up as their best self. And it may not be the person who is, having these mental battles
Mm-hmm.
personally. So, if I can be transparent, I'm someone who thrives in my suppression. So
Mm-hmm.
the reason why I birth emotional exchange, because I realized that having emotional exchanges with people and normalizing expressing emotions is very healing. Like, if you ever had a deep conversation with one of your girlfriends, like, dang, we really talking about this, it just brings you guys closer. The vulnerability of it all, the authenticity, the ability to say, like, yeah, girl, that happened to me, or yeah, bro, I can't believe that you're experiencing that too. Like, those experiences are healing. And
Mm-hmm.
I myself, even as a therapist, I'm super duper good at not acknowledging my feelings. That's why that's why it's a big mission of mine. So during those 3 months, I was capable of doing all of these things because I was not taking care of myself. I was depressed. And when you're in a depressive episode, you are not taking care of yourself. So when we talk about those percentages that go in your different pockets of life, my entrepreneurship was like 80%. My,
Mm-hmm.
meeting my clients and giving 30, it's like 85%. She's killing it, like in all of these other social media, boom, she's posting
Mm-hmm.
75%. She's doing it. But what if all of these areas of my
Mm-hmm.
life are having A plus, A, B, whatever, where does that leave enough for me personally? And my personal battery life percentage was low, extremely low. So, I put this out here just to tell my story, to let
Mm-hmm.
people know, like, I know you've seen me on podcasts and all these things, but, unless I disclose, I'm good at not sharing. And I think a lot of other entrepreneurs are too. And it's important to understand that the person behind the company is a human being, and they too deal with mental health things and struggles and topics. So that's why I think it's most important for entrepreneurs to be emotionally well, because these are the people who spend least time interacting with folks.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for being willing to share that with us, because a lot of people are experiencing their own version of that. And I think some people don't even know that. Some people
Mm-hmm.
don't even know that they're experiencing their own version of that, because depression, like you said, can look so different
Mm-hmm.
outwardly and
Mm-hmm.
inwardly. I know that maybe a year or so ago, I was experiencing what I would call a lot of depressive symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it at all, because I
Mm-hmm.
literally thought that depression meant sadness. At my big
Mm-hmm.
age, I
Mm-hmm.
thought that depression was just a deep and oppressive sadness. And
Mm-hmm.
since I wasn't sad, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
it didn't even occur to me that I could be
Mm-hmm.
depressed. But what I was actually experiencing was like an inability to focus at a magnitude of something I had never experienced before. I would sit down
Mm-hmm.
at my desk and have my to-do list and get nothing done for 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't understand why that
Mm-hmm.
was happening, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or just different things. Like I was experiencing so many different things that I didn't connect to
Right.
depression. And I was experiencing anxiety too, you know,
Yeah.
heart
Mhm.
palpitations, you know,
Mm, mhm,
tension and all over my body, like my muscles
mhm.
contracting, all types of twitching. Didn't
Yep,
know that that was anxiety or could
yep.
be a sign of anxiety.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, for sure. I think one big thing that I believe people are lacking is language. Like you're talking about right now, is like symptoms and behaviors and acknowledgement of them. And I believe that language is super important too, and just describing your emotions. So, when you're talking about depressive symptoms or anxiousness, I'm thinking about what it feels like to be insecure or worried or feeling helpless, the sadness that may be associated with depression. If you are feeling immense loneliness or hurt or grief, you feel extremely fragile. Like if one more thing happens, I'm going to break. If you're feeling super isolated, no one's here for me, I don't have anybody to talk to. If you're feeling like this big thing just happened to me, and honestly, I feel kind of empty. I really don't know. I mean, I guess it's good, but it might not be good. Like those messages that you're telling yourself are associated with depression and anxiousness. If you constantly are walking around with this sense of threat, like something is going to attack you or you're going to lose something at any moment. If
Mm-hmm.
I don't get another deal, then I'm not going to have the money that I need to do X, Y, and Z. That threat over your body is anxiety. And more times than not, if you're an entrepreneur, you are constantly taking risks, which you are just naturally putting yourself in situations where you're risking rejection, you're
Mm-hmm.
risking, financial security, like feeling significant because we're constantly comparing ourselves and we're constantly in this bucket with a bunch of other entrepreneurs who are doing things very similar. So you're questioning your worth. Like, these are reasons why entrepreneurs should have a therapist, and everybody should have a therapist for sure, but specifically entrepreneurs, because I believe that they are at risk of letdown easier. They are putting themselves at risk for humiliation, because at any point you can have a customer come and, leave you a bad review that may leave you resentful. So there's just like and embarrassed, the disappointment. There's just a bunch of different feelings that come when you are the person leading, when you are the person who believes that without your gift, without expressing yourself, this group of people over here won't be impacted. And if
Mhm.
you feel the pressure of taking care of another human being in any type of way, any form, my gift is responsible to give people jobs. My gift is responsible to change the trajectory of these other people's lives. My gift is responsible to buy my mom a house, paying off this person's debt. If you feel any of those things when you wake up in your day, please seek a safe place to just rest yourself, just
Mhm.
ground yourself in a place of safety because you need it.
I really, I could even feel it when you said just ground yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and when we think about that takes me back because I want to continuously circle back to my commitment is that we really get a sense for how can you be emotionally well as you build wealth and
Mm-hmm.
that practice of grounding yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And getting help and getting support is going to be so important because we haven't necessarily been given the tools and the
Mm-hmm.
skills, right? It's a skill, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that sometimes we think that when you go through life, we just automatically know, how to do that. We're just
Mm-hmm.
supposed to automatically know how to go through life. And the reality is that that is not the case. There
Mm-hmm.
are, happiness is actually a skill,
Mm.
right?
I like that.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you people, I tell people all the time, one time somebody asked me, how do you know that you are worthy of living? Because
Wow.
sometimes I don't know if I'm worthy of living. Sometimes I want to kill myself. And this
Mm.
person didn't know that I've gone through periods of my life where I just didn't even want to exist anymore. The
Mm-hmm.
struggle was so hard, growing up
Mm-hmm.
in poverty and wanting to be successful and the work
Mm-hmm.
that it requires that to the grind that it requires, like
Mm-hmm.
there's all it's like you're always between a rock and a hard place and you
Mm-hmm.
never just get to rest.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference between, uh out the difference between to me between somebody who is happy and somebody who isn't is the happy person has gone through their own version of experiences as well. But they figure
Mm-hmm.
out, how do I cope with this? How do I deal with this? How do I move past this? We all have our own types of
Mm-hmm.
emotional trauma, but how do
Mm-hmm.
we deal with them? What are the coping mechanisms that we have? I look at myself in relation to some people in my family, and it's like I
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of coping mechanisms. That person over
Mm-hmm.
there, they don't have any coping
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms. So our
Mm-hmm.
experience of life is going to be incredibly different.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know,
Yeah.
as we wind down, what are some
Mm-hmm.
of the what are some things that you do with your clients? Some
Mm-hmm.
tools that you use or maybe some exercises that you go through
Yeah.
that would help people get themselves grounded to a place where,
Mm-hmm.
they can be emotionally well as they build wealth.
Yeah. When I heard you talking, Tasha, the first thing that came to mind was safety. We have to understand that in order to heal, in order to be well, in order to enjoy our lives, we have to feel safe enough to do so. And that safety is built through connection, it's built through community, but it's also very much connected to how safe you feel in your own body in your own ability to make decisions for yourself and your own ability to take care of yourself. I think a lot of the times we are struggling with the level of safety and security we feel within our own minds. And we see people who are
Mm,
happy and we're
mhm.
like, oh, they're so happy. Y'all, they don't have nothing to worry about. They're not a fear of threat that something will be taken away from them. They feel
Or if I
safe.
can add,
Hmm.
they know how to deal with the fear. They know
Hmm.
how to
Hmm.
process that so that it doesn't steal their happiness or their joy in all the
Yeah, it's your
moments.
recovery time. Like I talk about, emotions are flowing. So we feel everything, but
Right.
how we behave and how we react to the emotion is super important. We have less, when you are in a healthy space, the recovery time to feeling the emptiness, the shame, the grief, your recovery time is what determines how well you are and
Oh
your
my
your
God.
emotional strength. Like
Ooh.
how strong am I emotionally? But you asked me specifically, and I know that.
Hold on.
Okay.
I was just talking to my friend the other day, Kara. I was just talking to her the other day about, there are just some traumas I don't think that I'll ever overcome. We talk about
Mhm.
healing, and I was
Mhm.
like, I am better at dealing with certain things that I've gone through, and they don't
Mhm.
affect me for, the same way that they used to. Maybe it'll
Mhm.
just something that I'll deal with for a few minutes and then I'll be able to move past it. And I
Mhm.
didn't have the language for that because I'm like, I mean, really, I would just like it to be dead. I would just like it to be
Mhm.
dead and buried. But the reality is that some of the
Mhm.
things that I've gone through, they are not. And I don't
Mhm.
know that they ever will be. But the
Mhm.
idea that the recovery time is also an indication of the healing
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
That it isn't a constant oppressive thing that is
Mhm.
there. It's just something that, affects me every now and then. And,
Mhm.
where at one point I'm like, and this is the processing too, like right when you give language to things, at one point
Mhm.
it's like, is it a failure that is still there for
Mhm.
me? But then the other
Mhm.
side of that is like, no, it's a triumph because
Yeah.
it's not affecting you at the same degree that it was.
Mhm.
So, but I just wanted to
Yes, I
share that
love that.
that really you really did make that
Thank
available
you.
to me right now. So thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Of course,
Um,
I'm glad that you were vulnerable enough to share that, and I think it's important, just to have these vulnerable emotional exchanges so that we can normalize what we're experiencing. The recovery time is real, and when you start experiencing it, that is your triumph, and you would never not want to feel anything because then you wouldn't be alive. The emotions that we experience are in our brains. They're already wired. They're connected to us. So the memories of them can the recovery time of the memories
mhm,
impact can decrease as you
mhm.
heal,
Yeah.
right? But it does not take away from the memory.
Mhm.
You feel me? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I was
I
sharing with I was sharing Hey Shay. I was sharing with Kara, it's like some stuff it's really dead. It's like some stuff I've gone
Mhm.
through, like the impact of the memory just isn't there
Mhm.
anymore. And
Mhm.
she was saying that
Good.
she was like, well, it's like her reaction, her response was like, how you have a scab and the
Mhm.
the the the,
Mhm.
the wound is fine as long as you don't bump the scab. But then
Mhm.
when you bump that thing, it might re-trigger some things that you thought were already healed. So um,
Mhm.
I really love that. But what question were
Yeah.
you answering? I can't even remember.
Okay. Yes. Because you're saying such good stuff that it's hard for me not to speak to them,
You go ahead,
and
go
then
ahead. We ain't on nobody's timeline,
and
okay?
then well, girl, we on the sleep timeline, but listen. Okay, so I want to say about the if you are triggered by something that you believe that you are healed from, this is when you activate patience, grace, self-compassion, like this is here, but remembering where you have come from the first time where that wound was there to where you are now. Like, I'm experiencing this wound as a scar or as a healed entity of my life versus when the impact happened. That's growth. And that's why healing is like a journey and not necessarily a destination, because we cannot predict the future. We never really know if something is going to trigger us later. But activating self compassion, activating grace, activating patience, paying attention to our recovery time, and acknowledging where we have come
I want
from.
to point out, right? Because to some people, this might just be in the abstract, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I'll just put myself on display to show that this really impacts your experience of the thing when you
Mm-hmm.
can activate these things that Ariana is talking about. So if I'm going
Yes.
through something and my experience is that, well, why am I having this feeling? Shouldn't I be
Mm-hmm.
healed from this already? And, getting upset with myself and
Mm-hmm.
sitting in that triggered moment and letting it fester versus when I have grace for myself and I'm like, well, you know, it's normal that certain types of trauma might come up from time to time, right? Well,
Yes,
now nothing
ma'am.
is wrong here, and I'm not experiencing myself like something is wrong. You just went out
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram,
I know.
but
My phone died.
um, okay, let me take this out. Sorry, guys. We're gonna be on YouTube if you want to come hang out with us over
Oh,
there.
yeah. I didn't even realize. I just let it die.
Um, okay, because I gotta unmute you. Say something so I can make sure I can hear you.
Hey, you can hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you. Um,
Good?
hold on.
Okay.
Mic check, mic check. Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you. Yes.
Oh, major echo.
Is it an echo or can you hear me at all? Oh, you can't hear me?
Do you? I can. Do you have two mics on? Like, do you have two?
Oh, yes, I do.
I'm like, this is
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to turn it off. I don't know how. Is it still echoing? Yeah, okay. All right, what about now? It's off now. Better? Is it better? No? My phone's off now. And I don't hear the echo. It sounds very crispy over here.
it's so. I'm hearing a double talk.
Uh, yeah, I took that off. Maybe I can. Are you talking to me through your computer or your headphones?
Through my computer.
And you turned your
Right at the
computer
end.
off. I know. I'm so sorry. I messed this up because I let my phone die.
If it
That's
was a
who it
little echo, we would keep going, but the echo is so bad. Let me try to.
is. I don't hear it at all on here on my side at all. I wonder if the guests hear it.
Check. Oh, she said it
Oh,
sounds
someone said sounds good for us. Yeah, so that's you, Tasha.
okay. Um, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So what I wanted to share, and I just turned my volume down right now. What I wanted to share was that there is actually a real impact to your experience when you activate the things that Ariana was talking about. So if I go through something and I experience myself as, why am I beating myself? Like, why am I
Mhm.
feeling this? Or
Mhm.
I should be over this already, and I'm allowing that experience to fester versus,
Mhm.
it's normal to feel this way, or um, I'm really like, I can really see the healing
Mhm.
in this area of my life, right? My actual experience based on what I'm telling myself is going to be qualitatively different, right? And one is gonna continue to further perpetuate the trauma, and one is gonna work to further perpetuate healing. So I just wanted that to not be something that is abstract and be
Yeah.
something that you really do get that these part of this is the physicality of emotional wellness. This is the
Mhm.
type of work, looking at what are those coping mechanisms and allowing them to be a part of our life experience as we learn them and leverage them and continue to go through life. So
Mhm.
let's go back to whatever. Do you remember the question you were supposed to be
Yes.
answering?
Yes. I wanted to give you guys some tools to be emotionally well. And if anything, I just want to remind you all to get your dose of happy chemicals. That is your D as in dopamine, O as in oxytocin, S as in serotonin, and E as in endorphin. All four of these emotions are your happy chemicals that are already stored in your brain, but we need to activate them in order to be happy. You were talking about happiness, and we're talking about like what does it mean to do that, and our dopamine is it's like one of hold on, I'm sorry y'all, I'm losing my notes. Okay, so it's our happy hormone that is connected to movement. So, in order to get your dose, you have to move your body first. So, this is your exercise, this is your walking, going outside, your oxytocin, your O, that is your love chemical. So, that's when we're hugging people or hugging ourselves. That's when we are showing affection, giving someone a compliment. Our serotonin is our feel good hormone. So, we're doing the things that make us feel good, lighting the candles, eating good food. And our endorphin is how we relieve stress. So anytime we're doing high, tense activities, then your brain is setting off endorphins, which releases stress into our is a stress reliever for our bodies. So make sure that you're getting your dose, DOSE, of happy chemicals, like on a daily. Like make it your business to do something, one of those, to activate them naturally. So that's a tip I wanted to give you guys, that you can activate right now. And I also want to share with you all that therapy is really not a scary thing. It is, but it's not. Okay, because I gotta kind of be honest. It is a little scary, but it's also very much worth the risk of embracing yourself and getting to know yourself better. So make sure you guys um, get your dose of happy chemicals. Make sure that you're expressing self compassion, patience, grace on a very deep, honest level. Intentionality is important when you're expressing those things. And then find you a therapist. There's plenty of Black therapists out here. There are programs that provide resources if some of the therapists in your area or our area are outside of your budget. I have a link that I can send you all with a bunch of resources that also includes free therapy services. So, yeah, you guys hit me up.
Love it. And I know that you have a program specifically for entrepreneurs. And I know that everybody else is going to be a little bit jealous because, you are obviously a dope therapist. And the conversations that you champion are so important. And the way that you approach it, I think is so culturally important and culturally relevant. And share it with the people. What is your program and how can they join?
Yeah, for sure. I want to give you Tasha's community a little insight on some of the things that I have. So if you guys go to emotional-exchange.com, you can download my free Order My Feelings workbook right now today. So wherever you're listening from, whenever you listen, go to emotional-exchange.com to see what resources free I have available for you guys. As far as my 8-week program, it's called the Hype Wellness Program. I take entrepreneurs from feeling stuck to thriving emotionally and feeling like they have the tools and emotional strength necessary to carry their business. So it is an 8-week program. You get one-on-ones with me every week, tied with homework, downloadables. I want you to leave the experience feeling like I can do and conquer anything. So if you're interested in the Hype Wellness community, please visit the website emotional-exchange.com and fill in your application. Come meet with me. I also do check-ins for entrepreneurs where you can sit with a therapist and wellness coach, myself, and just discuss some of the hurdles or blocks that you're currently having personally and professionally.
Trey says this is such an important topic, and I couldn't agree more. And this is such an important program, like being able to create a space where people can do this type of work. I really think is invaluable, and this is the type of resources that you need access to in order to be emotionally well as you feel well. And if we're being real, we live in a very hostile environment a lot of the time. Like a lot of the avenues that we have to creating wealth, and a lot of the emotional spaces that we've been taught to be in as we're creating wealth, they are toxic and they're not conducive to wellness. And even if as you're working, microaggressions that you're experiencing at work, if you're an entrepreneur, a lot of the messages that you get as an entrepreneur, again, not healthy. So I really want you guys to understand that it is so important, no matter where you are, no matter who you are in this journey to financial freedom, it is important that you prioritize your emotional wellness. And part of that is being in spaces where you can safely connect with and share emotions, and really get grounded as you continue to navigate your own personal path to prosperity. So thank you guys so much for being here. I see all of you. Uh, thank you, Ariane, for this incredible conversation. I am so grateful to be able to have you here to share your perspective. I think that you added so much, like so much authenticity, so much realness, so much practical things, so many practical things that people can use on their journey to being emotionally well. So thank you so much, and I look forward to having more conversations like this in the future. And um, that's Tasha Talks Money and More for you. We'll be with you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you guys. Bye.
Bye.